need a knot, whether the bread is for me or not. I need a knot, whether the bread is for me or not. I need a knot, whether the bread is for me or not. Show me the spot. I had to get paid. Used to move wide.
Do you remember the first time you heard UGK?
I remember specifically the first time I heard UGK. I was with some guys. It was in Michigan, and I was pretty young. And there was some dudes that were in the street. It's interesting that, you know, hip hop, it took a minute to really learn how to express all the different elements of what that street culture really was. You know, the early stuff was really party oriented, and then it got really into like this artistic thing. NWA kind of touched on it. I feel like NWA were the first ones that I heard that talked on a record the same way that people talked when they were, you know, selling drugs and playing basketball, and, you know what I'm saying, like really living that kind of life. But UGK was one of the groups that came out, and I didn't even realize they were from the South, you know what I mean? I just knew that they was different from anything else. And the way that they were, just kind of the way that they were expressing things, the way the music sounded, it was like, you know, this combination of, you know, the music that people would listen to. Like when people didn't listen to only rap, they also listened to Curtis Mayfield, and they also listened to like certain soul records that spoke to the culture too, you know, and listen to Dolomite and all that kind of stuff. And so it encompassed a music that, like, you know, yeah, we listen to James Brown and we listen to P-Funk, you know, which it seemed like the East Coast was heavy on James Brown, West Coast was heavy on P-Funk. They started bringing out some of the like Stax sounds and like put in like the rap drums with them and things like that. But the way they were talking and just their speech tones and their mannerisms and everything, just the whole attitude that they brought, it spoke to particularly a specific part of street culture, but it was also really smart too. You know what I mean? It wasn't ignorant for the sake of being ignorant. It was just it wasn't ignorant at all, actually, in reality. Like it was really expressing something that was going on and like documenting something in a way that, in a similar way to what Tupac did, you know what I mean? In a similar way to what NWA did, in a certain, you know, similar to what a lot of artists have done, which really is, you know, take that conversation that happens on the corner, which goes to everything from, you know, the economic side of hustling, to ideas about life, to talking about relationships with women, to, you know, it really took that conversation and put it into music in a way that felt natural. You know what I mean? It was natural. Like they really they put a whole lot of truth and a whole lot of that kind of personality into that music. And so anybody that knew anything about it, it touched them first. It touched us first. You know, I was never a particularly street dude, but I'd be in those environments and I knew people. My close friends were hustlers and came from that real shit. You know, I had parents. You know what I'm saying, and so I was in a little bit different boat, but I knew that world well, and so hearing that be expressed in that way was really big. But then also, it caught on. You know, the thing about the truth is that even if you've never seen the truth that you're hearing about and never experienced it, it still is powerful and magnetic in that way and draws people in. You know, sometimes out of a sense of curiosity, sometimes out of a sense of you know, just the common humanity of things, like that common feeling of, you know, everything from fuck the world to I'm the shit to, you know, I love this woman to, you know, it just really like took a little, it's a slice of life music, you know what I'm saying? It's like folk, it's almost like folk music, or like, it's, you know, they used to study, you know, you go to the Smithsonian and they studying the blues and they're studying those old folk songs and they're studying, you know, certain parts of music. And I think that UGK's music belongs in that category too. You know, that they documented part of American life that nobody else was at that time. Yeah. And they definitely paved the way for Outkast, and they definitely paved the way for, you know, people that came and made it really big. And the world didn't really hear UGK until Jay-Z put them on a record.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then we got to hear it really for the first time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But just hearing those voices, like, you know, I was already familiar with their music, but I remember other people around me hearing those voices and just being like, who are those dudes, man? Like, I don't even understand all the words they're saying, but who is that? You know what I mean? In Minnesota, like, that's a big thing, you know?
Yeah.
So it was dope.
Do you remember some of the first UGK songs you heard specifically?
The biggest UGK song that was part of my life, I come from the Midwest, and we have two big gang families, or like families of gangs. One of them is, you know, the Vice Lords, and the other one is the Gangster Disciples. The Vice Lords came from this legacy of, you know, the El Rookins, but the Black Stone Rangers. So they were called Stones. They were called Black Stones. You know what I mean? So that song, Pocket Full of Stones, they believe that song was written about their gang. You know what I'm saying? Like, that song was like a big part of my life. Anybody that was around Chicago or Michigan, you know what I mean? You know, places that had those gangs as popular, like, man, that shit was part of our life. So to me, in my mind, that's the biggest UGK song. Because it was at every party, it was in everybody's car, everybody was singing it, everybody was, you know, that was like, it was really pervasive.
So when someone like Bun B takes time out of his day and makes a point to take a stand against Islamophobia and against prejudice, how does that make you feel?
Well, I mean, Bun B is one of those guys, man, he exemplifies everything about hip-hop culture. Somebody that's really socially aware, somebody that's highly intelligent, somebody that is really relevant and still really close to what's going on in the street, somebody that understands the business, and he's made himself an ambassador of hip-hop and everything that represents. Like, you know, he's kind of everybody in one, you know what I mean? And so he's been a really powerful force, and it's been really great. It's been really great to see him, you know, stand up for these different issues, but then also just be dope. You know, he kind of is like the South's version of Africa Bambaataa or KRS. You know, you get these ambassadors for hip hop culture. You know, guys like Ice-T on the West Coast. You know, Bun and Ice-T remind me a lot of each other, just in the sense that they both can really touch on street themes, but they're also highly intelligent, they're also business savvy, and they're also really good in front of a camera. You know, they can code switch. You know, I've seen Bun B on the news saying, you know, this is a problem that we have with the institutional, so and so. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, you know, hey, shorty, what it do? You know. And both of them are really him. Yeah. He teaches a class in you know what I mean, at a university, and you know, he's all of it. He's all, as we used to say at my time, he's all that. You know what I mean? And to me, that's important. It's important that we never forget the whole picture of what hip hop is. So when you get an individual that encompasses, you know, the street side and all of it, you know what I mean? It's really, those are really precious gems. Those people are they're our greatest resource in the hip hop world, to have somebody like that can speak on our behalf. And he's one of a very small number of people that can really speak for hip hop. In my mind, I think that you know, you get people that can speak for one element of hip hop, but can't, or one degree or one dimension of it, but in terms of speaking for the whole culture, he's one of very few people that's really qualified to represent us in the right way, and he does it. And that's why everybody pays respect to him. I'm sure you have no trouble getting anybody that knows anything about hip hop to probably go on and on and on extolling the virtues of Bun, because he's just, you know, plus he's just dope. You know what I mean? Like his voice, his presence, like he has presence on stage, he has presence on a track, and you can't teach those things. Those things are from God. It's in the DNA. It's, you know, he is clearly like from the griot tradition in Africa, like, you know what I'm saying, like, yeah, and the poet tradition and like the whole shit.
Can you talk about a little bit about meeting him for the first time?
The first time I met him late. Like it felt like we would have met a lot earlier, but I met him last summer in Seattle. And his voice is actually, he gave me permission. His voice is sampled on my album as a chorus, the album that I'm about to release soon here. A song called Need a Knot. And when I met him, he knew all about me. He knew all about our label, Rhyme Sayers. He knew about Atmosphere. He knew about everything that we built in the Twin Cities, and like he knew about my entire, like, that's what I'm saying when I say he really can speak for the entire culture. Like he knows about me, knows about Sage Francis, A$AP Rock, LP, Doomtree, you know what I'm saying? Like he knows about the entire thing, is well versed in all of that stuff. And I asked him to be in a video for the song where he would have to come to Minnesota in the wintertime. And he was like, yeah, do I have to come in the wintertime? I'm like, look, man, I'll buy you a coat. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll get you the right coat or whatever. And he was like, all right, gave me his number. Never met me before, you know what I mean? Gave me his number. I said, you know, your voice is in this song, is that okay? And he's like, oh yeah, man. Send him the song. Oh yeah, love it. You know, it's just very, very graceful, man. Very, he kind of has a statesman quality about him. And he'll never not be relevant. You know what I mean? He can make records for the rest of the time, and the people at the university level will appreciate it, and the streets will appreciate it the same way. It's just like he's one of those priceless gems.
And last question we had, if you could sum up briefly, you know, UGK's legacy, how would you describe it?
UGK brought another aspect of life that was not known before, and made it, documented it. You know what I mean? They documented a certain part of American life and made it part of the historical lexicon. You know what I mean? The fact that those records exist created something. You know what I mean? And it's extremely important. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Show me the spot. I need a knot.